Hi, this is Yebing. So I will try to talk this version in English. So I do have several accounts on social media talking about mostly COVID-19 vaccine, but a lot of them are in Mandarin. For example, the WeChat account. But if sometimes I do on the Clubhouse, so spoke both like English and Chinese. If interested, maybe just follow on Clubhouse. So today I want to talk about booster shots, right? This is what's going on in the news for the last couple of days, and to be honest, actually has been for a while. So this is a little bit of information about what's happening with booster shot. So the booster shot plan, mostly in the developed country, for example, Israel already started, and they're rolling with different age groups. Soon we'll move to age 40 and above, and the requirement has been vaccinated over 5 months ago. And Germany and France, they already set out a plan. They will focus on elder people and the medical workers starting in September. UK will likely to be confirmed very soon. The plan will be similar to France and Germany. US has really made the news because they announced on August 18th, starting at September 20th, anyone has been vaccinated over 8 months with the mRNA vaccine can get a third shot, which is a booster shot. Remember, different from any other country, US is really the first country to say anybody who has been vaccinated over 8 months. There's no risk group for differentiation. Another thing in US is immune compromised people have been recommended to take additional shots since August 13th. So this is a little bit different. This is really not a boost shot for immune compromised people because they never respond well for the first 2 shots of the mRNA vaccine. This is just helping them to catching up. And talking about booster shot, clearly one of the questions is why booster? So why do we need a booster? Think about the vaccine efficacy. Vaccine effectiveness might wane over time. So this is one of the paper published early this year in Nature Medicine. This is a modeling. They were modeling over time the vaccine efficacy or in real world would be effectiveness will drop over time. This will be against mild cases or severe cases. They will both drop over time. Another issue is the variants. We are getting more and more variants. This is a variant concern according to WHO. So for example, the beta variant, gamma variant, and the dominant one right now, Delta, all has some effect on the vaccine efficacy or effectiveness. So that's the reason for thinking about booster. But if we think about booster, this additional question is when to get one, right? And another thing is, do we need a booster now if you're talking about time? And lastly, also most importantly, is a booster needed for everyone? So this is some of studies US government used to justify the announcement of everybody vaccinated over 8 months ago may need a booster. So this is a tracking vaccine effectiveness in real world in New York. So this is showing all adults age over 18, but actually they have subgroup. The older people actually show similar patterns or only show this figure. So this is VE for infection, and this side is VE for hospitalization. What you can see is over time from May to July, which coincidence when the Delta take foot and become the dominant one in US. You can see the VE is dropping against infection. Another thing you can notice is VE for hospitalization. So the protection against hospitalization or severe cases really has been remarkably stable for mRNA vaccine. So from this, what we can conclude is VE against infection is reducing and it's stable for hospitalization. So this is another study and has been cited by a lot of people. This is by Mayo Clinic. They were looking at Minnesota. What they find is from like starting at February until this July, what they're seeing is at July there is a big drop for both Moderna and Pfizer. Pfizer appeared to be larger. That's a little bit strange because the previous study in New York, Pfizer and Moderna is very similar, but this is one of studies shows a big difference. And regardless, they both dropped against infection. This is V against infection is dropping. Still, V against hospitalization here remains stable and actually pretty similar across both vaccines. Again, this is a common trend. VE, we are seeing some reduction against infection, but has been stable for hospitalization. And the third study I want to show, this is a special group because this is a nursing home residents. We know these people are at higher risk. And what we are seeing is before Delta, the VE is 74% against infection. So this is only against infection. After Delta take a foot, it becomes a dominant one, becomes dropped to 50%. So VE is still reduced for infection, even especially for the high risk group. But why VE is reduced for infection while stable for hospitalization? From scientifically, it actually makes perfect sense. Why? Because infection can happen really fast. And think about it, the virus can enter a cell really fast, and you might not need a lot of virus to infect one person, right? So, and in that case, what can you rely to block the infection? You probably can only rely the neutralizing antibody, which by definition will block the virus getting into a cell, like these antibodies. But you can only rely the existing one in your body because your body don't have a lot of time to prevent infection. But think about hospitalization or severe cases. What's happening over there? It does take time to progress from infection to severe cases. So during that time, more components of the immune system can be mobilized. During the process, for example, there will be memory B cells. So the memory B cells, they don't make antibody, but once they saw the virus or the bacteria, they remember these guys and they will be called upon. They will make more B cells which can make the antibody. So you will increase the neutralizing antibody titers in your body by a large amount. Another thing is T cell. We call it cell immunity. So cellular immunity. What does it mean? So the antibody will get rid from the B cell will get rid of the virus outside the cell. But once the virus gets into the cell, the T cell can clear that. They will attack this infected cell and clear that. During that process, prevent the virus taking a foot in your body and also become like a severe ill, right? So by all these, but we need to remember V against severe disease is more important for any vaccine. We need to think about prevent infection. It is actually extremely hard. May depend on the virus itself. For example, HPV virus, it takes forever for them to get into a cell. So even with very low antibody titers, HPV vaccine can effectively prevent infection. This may not be true for any other virus, right? So this is a high bar, but more importantly, it's a VE against severe diseases. So we should focus on VE against severe cases, not VE against infection to determine the need for booster shots. So just because we saw some reduction of VE against mild infection or just asymptomatic infection of COVID-19, that doesn't mean we need a booster shot, right? And then let's ask about the question, what can a booster do? This is Pfizer, what they showed in their earnings calls. What they show is neutralizing titers, so the neutralizing antibody we previously mentioned, can go much higher if you give them a booster shot after 2 doses. So this is look at the wild type and the beta variant. What you can see is before vaccination, you don't have any neutralizing antibody. That makes sense. And after vaccination, you have pretty high titers. This is neutralizing antibody. And this is against the wild type virus, but if you against the variant, for example, beta, you do have a reduced titer. And so like over a month, it's pretty stable. At 8 months, you see the drop clearly much lower. But if you at 8 months, you give a third shot, it goes up really, really high, even higher than the peak of after the second dose. And this across age group. This is 18 to 55, this is 65 to 85. They all have a clear boost effect. So a booster will increase neutralizing antibody titers. This is normal process for immune memory, remember? So this is not surprising actually. So remember the memory B cells? This is the exact same immune process because they saw a third dose of vaccine. They would think, oh, we saw you again. We remember you. Now we are going to make a tons of antibody against you. That's why the neutralizing titer goes up significantly. It's pretty common, so it's pretty easy to get a booster to boost your neutralizing antibody. So what's the big deal of neutralizing antibody? Why do you want to hide? because right now with more and more evidence, we do show higher neutralizing antibody titers are associated with higher vaccine efficacy or vaccine effectiveness. This is again the Nature Medicine paper. So what they do is they look at different clinical trials lined up with their observed vaccine efficacy and their neutralizing antibody titer. What they find, the higher the titer you generate at the peak after your second dose of the vaccination, Johnson & Johnson just one dose, but still it's a similar story. The higher the neutralizing antibody titer, the higher the observed vaccine efficacy in those clinical trials. And you can see it even within the same vaccine. So this is Moderna's phase 3 trial. What they have done, they look at people who didn't generate any detectable neutralizing antibody. Their vaccine efficacy in the clinical trial is about 50% over the 3 months time. And if after 2 doses you get a neutralizing antibody titer around 100, you have vaccine efficacy around 90%. If you're really, really high, which is a 1,000 titer, that's 10 times higher than this, you got a 96% efficacy. So if you got higher neutralizing antibody titer, you might have higher VE. But you need to note a couple of caveats. First of all, we are talking about a peak neutralizing antibody associated VE. We are not talking about maintaining that peak antibody titer over the time, all the time, right? And it's not clear what's the minimum neutralizing antibody titer needed for protection. That's still not clear. And more importantly, this is established for mild cases. Other immune components may play a bigger role for severe cases, for example, T-cell immunity. And we also want to think about, if we're talking about using a booster to boost a neutralizing antibody, when we think about whether we need to, we also need to think about what's the point of it, right? If you look at it, if we boost the neutralizing antibody, can it really increase real VE? For example, if we look at Moderna, 10-fold neutralizing antibody from 100 to 1,000, you only translate into 6% VE changes. What's the point of that? And if you're already at 1,000, I really don't see how much you can get higher than that, because no vaccine will ever be 100%. So the return for those kind of investment is rapidly diminishing. We need to think about, was it necessary, right? And also, is it needed, right? Are neutralizing antibody titers in mRNA vaccine recipients low enough for boosters now? This is another Moderna study just published in Science in the last week. What they're showing is 6 months out, the serum from those people can still effectively neutralizing all the variants, including here B1.617.2. This is a Delta, the one we are really worried about. So 6 months out, they can still effectively neutralizing SARS-CoV-2 virus, all the variants. So does it necessary, like 8 months, we need to start a booster? Highly unlikely, right? So if a booster can increase the neutralizing antibody, how long can it last, right? People talk about let's boost it really, really high. And how long can it last? If it lasts a couple of days, what's the point of that again, right? So this is a monkey experiment. What they do, they put the vaccine into the monkey to see the neutralizing antibody formation in the monkey. So what they find is, yeah, after 29 weeks, at 29 weeks, you give a boost shot to the monkey, neutralizing antibody does go high, about 10-fold higher compared to like the peak after second dose. But this lasts how long? Lasts 8 weeks, because at week 37, it falls back to the peak of the second dose. So the extreme high peak value of the neutralizing antibody after third shot may not last that long, right? And this is another study from UK. They are tracking the real VE in their population against infection disease. So what they find is, so there is a BioNTech, which is the Pfizer one, these guys here, and also the AstraZeneca one over here, this color one. What they find is, in the beginning, obviously, Pfizer has a better efficacy, effectiveness, prevent infection compared to AstraZeneca. And remember, Pfizer also have much higher antibody titer. But over time, within 3 to 4 months, the vaccine effectiveness essentially overlap. That means like the Pfizer effectiveness dropped quickly to the AstraZeneca level. And also that means like the higher titer may really only just protect you for that long, and it will soon drop out. So with that, we need to think about, can the neutralizing antibody really increased by the booster bring real VE increase, right? May not that much. How much can it increase, right? That's the question. Are we investing too much for very little return? And how long can the increased neutralizing antibody and its perceived benefits, it's really perceived because we are not sure whether it's real or not, last, right? It may not last long, whatever they have, right? And so with all those questions, let's think about it. Does mRNA vaccine need a booster shot now? So is the vaccine no longer effective? Absolutely not. We have a lot of evidence suggesting otherwise, right? Even against Delta, only limited decreased VE against mild cases or infection observed. VE remained strong against severe cases. Half a year out, vaccine recipient serum can neutralizing Delta, no problem at all. So what's the benefit of booster? It's actually unknown. We know it can increase neutralizing antibody, but that's about it. There is unknown real benefits, might be actually very limited. If you look at Moderna's clinical trial, neutralizing antibody titer from 100 to 1000 associated VE with 90 to 96%. Is this something we need to invest so much on? And the increase in neutralizing antibody titer may not last very long either if we look at the preclinical model of rhesus monkey. So is there any risk? A lot of people talking about booster shot always like, there might be benefit, might not be, but there's no risk. Is really no risk? We know the mRNA vaccine have a very good safety profile, but we still see in rare cases some adverse event, sometimes even serious. For example, myocarditis is mostly associated with the second dose of mRNA vaccine. So let's look at the first dose of mRNA vaccine. This is coming from the CDC ACIP meeting. What you can see is in male, between age 12 to 24, these two groups, you have a higher than expected myocarditis or pericarditis cases happening. But if you look at the second dose, now you get more of those situations. Even at girls between 12 to 24 and boys, men actually starting 12 to almost 40, you all have higher than expected myocarditis. And if we look at the high risk group at the first dose, this number also goes up a lot. So my question would be, what about third dose? We really don't know. So how many Pfizer used to justify their a booster shot? They were doing dozens of people just to look at the neutralizing antibody. There's no way with those kind of study can give us enough understanding of those rare adverse events. So we need to think about what kind of safety study we need for a booster shot before we think about let's roll it out to a general public, right? So, and again, does a booster shot solve any problem? We're talking about the benefits, but is that going to help us limit the pandemic? This is again the New York study. So this time I want to look lower those lines. So this line, this dashed line is infection rate for the unvaccinated people. What you can see is in July it shoots up with the Delta variant, right? But if you look at the solid line here, this is infection rate for fully vaccinated people. They do go up, but it's much lower than the unvaccinated people. And they look at the hospitalization. The unvaccinated already picking up, and the vaccinated still well protected. If you look at these, the problem is not vaccinated people. And remember, the third dose did not help with those people who are unvaccinated. It didn't solve any real problem right now. And if you look at the US as a whole, just using the CDC, this data is updated to August 12, so it's very new, right? You look at per 100,000 people, how many new infections in the last week, last 7 days, and compared with the percent of total population who are fully vaccinated. What you can see, this kind of color means you have very low new cases and you have very high vaccine coverage. If you are in purple, then you have a high vaccine coverage, but you still have high caseload. If you look at the red here, this is low vaccine coverage and very high transmission. What you can see this, we have some purple, yes, we do. But look at the map. The US has a problem is a lot of red. It has a lot of red instead of a lot of purple. So the problem is really not the vaccinated people, is there so many people unvaccinated. Proposing booster shot now is trying to solving essentially a non-existing problem, because essentially they're saying the vaccinated people has a problem, need some solution. No, they don't have a problem. They don't need to make up a solution for that, right? And the booster shot will not help the unvaccinated, so unlikely to control the pandemic, unlikely to contribute in any meaningful way. And on the contrary, the booster shot proposal by US instead will create more problems. For example, without clear evidence for the need of the booster shot, will it increase vaccine hesitancy? One of the reasons for vaccine hesitancy is how well the vaccine works. It might only last a month. Why bother, right? Right now, without any evidence, you're already underselling the vaccine. You're saying like 8 months out the line, you need a booster shot. So how will that impact the mindset of the people who are hesitant to get the first shot? I doubt it will increase the chance they get a shot. I'm highly suspicious about that. I actually suspect they probably will make up their mind never get a vaccine. That's the danger of it. And we already have an unvaccination problem, and this will exacerbate that. And without a scientific justification, drawing a line of 8 months, will it lead to confusion? So during the White House announcement, Dr. Murphy mentioned like it's not a magical number. Of course, it's not a magical number because there's no science behind it, essentially. So he mentioned you can go a week further, a week earlier, a week later. Yeah, that's a good point. But other people will think about what? Why not 6 months? Why not 4 months? Why not now? Because you already said you will need a booster shot at 8 months. And will it push more people try to get a booster shot immediately for the people who are really anxious? And with those kind of announcements without scientific justification, it does increase the anxiety of those vaccinated people. It doesn't make any sense. It's not necessary. And that leads to the third point. There are actually almost 14 million people in US. They are vaccinated by a vaccine made by Johnson & Johnson. It's adenovirus vaccine. It's one shot. So is it okay to propose booster shot for mRNA vaccine only, leaving the 14 million people essentially in limbo? They have no guidance. They don't know how well their vaccine works. They don't know if their vaccine is also dropping, and they don't know when they would know what kind of booster shot they will take, right? And most importantly, I think this is really, really wrong at this point is without FDA approval and CDC recommendation, government proposed boost starting September 20, will it diminish the public trust in vaccine approval process? Let's look at what normal vaccine approval process works, right? So the company first need to finish their clinical trials. They need to finish their study, all the study, research, development, and the clinical trials, and submit all data to FDA. And FDA will confirm the efficacy and safety of the vaccine. If they confirm it, they will approve it. CDC, ACIP will confirm the need of the vaccine, then they will recommend for use. That's the time when we start to use it, right? Even for the EUA of the COVID-19 vaccine, we follow this process to the T's. And what's happening now with the booster shot? Pfizer submitted initial data. Remember, this is not complete data. Moderna has not even submitted anything yet. FDA has not approved any booster, probably hasn't even started any review process yet because remember, Pfizer just submitted initial data. And for the CDC, ACIP, which is a body needs to make the recommendation, they haven't even put out a date for booster shot review. So how on earth can the US government say, we have a date on September 20th and it's going to be 8 months out, you can take a booster shot? You cannot do that. This is an independently regulatory process. This is how the vaccine confidence was built on. If we start doing this, the government start saying those kind of things, it will undermine the independence of those regulatory process and also undermine public trust in this process. Remember, vaccine hesitancy is the problem. The unvaccinated people is the problem. They are unvaccinated largely because they don't have confidence in the vaccine. If we start to undermine the regulatory agency's integrity, we are going to lose them even faster, and we will get us into even more trouble. Remember, the unvaccinated people are the problem right now. And also remember when Trump was like 2020 before the election, he says like, I'm going to get a vaccine approved before the election. That was wrong because this is an independent process. Right now it's a different administration, but if this administration starts to saying like, we are going to get this done at a certain time without the independent review of all those regulatory agencies, that this admission is wrong too. We cannot do that. We need to help build the vaccine confidence in the public. We are not supposed to undermining it. Right now, the US booster proposal, the way it is announced, definitely is not the right way to do it. And I know there's a lot of like breakthrough cases. A lot of people focus on breakthrough cases can transmit it, and a lot of breakthrough cases are happening. So if we feel the need for booster shot because we are seeing more breakthrough cases, is it rational? Let's think about it. So this is also from CDC, one of the slides they showed in ACIP meeting. So let's look at two states, two like made up states. They each have 1 million people, and during the pandemic, one state has 70% fully vaccinated, the other state is a little bit lagged behind, or a lot lagged behind. They are 30% fully vaccinated. So for the highly vaccinated state, they would have 29 cases, breakthrough cases. They would have unvaccinated people will have 101 cases. The total have 130 cases, right? Infection. And 22% will be breakthrough cases in the infection. If you look at hospitalization, they have very low hospitalization, and the hospitalization will be 9% from the breakthrough cases. If you look at the very poorly vaccinated state, they would have 5,000 unvaccinated cases. And the vaccinated case will also have 250, right? Combined together over 5,000. So in that, you only have 5% cases are breakthrough cases. So it's a lower percentage compared to highly vaccinated state, but you have many more cases. You have much higher infection rate in the state, and you also create more hospitalization. So this is a dilemma. With higher vaccine coverage, we are likely to see in the breakthrough cases start to making up more in the total infection cases. But remember, we bring down the total case from over 5,000 to 130 with a high vaccine coverage group. Vaccine can reduce relative risk. It's a relative risk reduction for the VE compared with unvaccinated people. If the background infection rate increases, absolute infection risk will go up even with the best vaccine. We can think about it. Right now, daily new infection in the US is between 140 to 150K a day, right? Even if every vaccinated people get a booster shot immediately now, and it will immediately increase the VE to 95%. This is not going to happen actually. With 50% vaccine coverage, there will be over 7,000 breakthrough cases daily. So if the CDC think they cannot explain the breakthrough cases after 2 doses, and they think giving a booster shot will solve the problem, I'm not sure how they are going to explain the breakthrough cases after the booster shot. And when that happens, how will it impact the vaccine confidence in this country? I don't think they are making the rational cases here. And this is a global pandemic. So thinking about the vaccination, we cannot not discount the global supply demand issue. So developing countries are in desperate need of vaccines. If we look at the US right now, we have 50% fully vaccinated, 60% of population at least get 1 shot. If you look at global, the fully vaccinated rate only at 24%. And remember, majority of these 24% are in US, Europe, those developed countries. So if the developed countries start to boost the shots early, it will inevitably delay the global vaccination campaign because there are only so many vaccines made these days. The demand is way above the supply. We do have surplus of vaccine in US, but that's very rare. This doesn't happen with most of other countries. And those developing countries, they have cases, they are desperate need for vaccine. with uncontrolled pandemic around the world, there will inevitably be new variants coming out, and we cannot control how the variants evolve essentially. They might be more transmittable than Delta. They might impact the VE even further, even more profoundly than Delta. So blindly promoting a booster shot when we don't need it will bring limited, even negative returns if we end up vaccinating people who don't need it and getting away from getting away from delivering the vaccine to the people who need it. We just making the pandemic even longer, and we just risk more new variants. So I'm not saying booster shot is not going to be needed in the future, but we need a rational booster shot campaign. We need to think about it in a rational way, in a reasonable way. We need to look at the real science, right? We need to have a solid science for booster shot. Even for any vaccine, that's the case. We need to focus on the real vaccine effectiveness, especially VE against severe cases. We're not supposed to just panic because there's some mild infection. That's not the point. And remember, right now, the problem is really the unvaccinated people. We don't need to make up a problem saying like the vaccinated people has a problem. It doesn't exist. We don't need to make up that. And the recommendation of booster shot will very likely and should be based on risk. For example, immune-compromised people were not protected well by the initial series, so they should take additional dose. If the additional dose is beneficial, they should take it immediately. They don't need to wait 8 months. That doesn't make sense at all. And if we look at who is at risk, right? Nursing home people, they are probably older, they have more underlying disease, and the medical worker, they probably have a higher exposure risk, right? They had higher risk. They should be followed separately. And if any sense showing the VE is decreasing in this group, they probably need to be recommended a booster immediately. Not necessarily wait for 8 months. There's nothing magical for the 8 months line. Let's look at the real VE, decide when we need it. And with all those, especially if we want to put into a broader population, like what the US is doing, we need to take global vaccine supply demand into account. We need to think about we are trying to control the pandemic. The booster shot should be a method to control the pandemic. We need to think what's the most effective way of doing that. We are not just vaccinating people for the purpose of giving people a shot. That doesn't make sense. We are trying to protect people. Okay, that's all I want to share. Again, if you're interested, you can follow me on all different kind of social media platform, especially on Clubhouse. I do go on there pretty often. And thank you, and bye.